There are calls for federal intervention as a possible strike by pilots of a lockout at Air Canada is really looming. CP24's Courtney Heels is following the latest on this story and joins us live this morning inside Pearson Airport with more on what could potentially happen between now and next Wednesday. Courtney.
Hey, good morning, Jennifer. We actually just moved from Pearson Airport over to the strike center here, where the union representing about 5,000 Air Canada pilots, they're getting ready for the possibility of walking off the job or a lockout. So really, the clock is ticking at this point. We're giving you a quick look behind the scenes. You can see members, fielding phone calls because there are a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty right now. I want to bring in Charlene. I'm sure you can explain what's happening behind me here a little bit better. Give us a sense of how your union is getting ready for the possibility of a strike here.
I appreciate you joining us here in our fully functioning and open strike center. We have a slew of volunteers behind us working behind the scenes right now to make sure we know where our pilots are, that we can support our pilots should we end up in a lockout or strike scenario with Air Canada on the 18th at midnight 01, if you will, so first thing Wednesday morning or Tuesday night.
So as it stands right now, the negotiations with Air Canada are still happening, both sides still at the table. How would you describe how those talks are going?
The negotiations are still happening. We're still in the end of the 21-day cooling off period. We're seeing some progress at the table. We're still asking that Air Canada really shows up and closes the gap that we're seeing at the negotiating table.
Is this new then, some progress at the table? I mean, we heard from Air Canada earlier this week saying it seems as though the two sides are still quite far apart. So is that a new development, a little bit of progress there?
I would say that with negotiations, any negotiations, it's incredibly fluid and dynamic. And so we have seen some movement in the last couple days. We're not there yet, though. We do need Air Canada to really show up and compensate, value this pilot group appropriately for the work that we do provide Air Canada.
On compensation, I know part of the argument is seeing compensation similar to what American pilots are getting in terms of wages. Can you help us understand that, what the request is and what the difference can be when it comes to the pay scale?
I think that when we're looking at our industry counterparts, whether they're in Canada or North America at large, when we're representing pilots that are in most cases paid half of what their industry counterparts are made, we do really need to close that gap. And in some scenarios, the pilots who are first hired at Air Canada, they're in situations where they're having to take on second jobs. We've surveyed our pilots. We know that a quarter of the pilots I represent, out of the 5,500 we do represent, 80% of those a quarter of them have a second job. 80% of those pilots, that job is out of necessity. They have that second job because they're trying to put food on the table, they're trying to pay their bills, they're trying to pay off the debt that they had to accumulate to even become a pilot in the first place. And they come to Air Canada with experience. So again, we're asking Air Canada to recognize that.
Do you think people are surprised by that maybe people assume that pilots make really great money and don't necessarily realize that's not the case, especially when starting out?
I think that even in my conversations with family and friends, when you speak about that wage disparity, it is shocking.
Lastly, can I ask you to explain the map is gone. There was this really great map on the wall showing where your pilots, your airplanes are around the world. I wanted to see if you could just speak to the prep work behind the scenes, because if there was a strike or a lockout, your airline pilots are all over the world. How do you kind of prepare for that?
That's correct. Air Canada is a global operation operating not only in Canada, North America, but around the world. We still are launching flights as we speak, so our responsibility is to support and take care of our pilots. I think everyone can appreciate this is a stressful time right now for all involved. We're really trying to come to a deal with Air Canada at the table. Should we not be able to do that, we need to make sure we know where our pilots are. If Air Canada can't get them home, we'll certainly make sure we can get them home and take care of them, and then make sure everyone knows what our next steps are after that.
Yeah, if there's a strike or a lockout, obviously a very big impact for sure. Charlene, thank you for taking the time to speak with us this morning. We'll, of course, be in touch because we know, of course, the impact with the union, of course, for Air Canada, and for people who are planning to fly. This morning, Jen, you saw we were over at Pearson, a lot of people catching flights with Air Canada first thing this morning, also saying at that time they weren't sure what was going to happen next week, and they were trying to make other arrangements.